Welcome to the KIDS Webinar, a guide for early childhood collaborations. My name is Grace Araya, and I'm the Director of Community Systems Statewide Supports here at Illinois Action for Children, and I will introduce my fellow presenters in just a moment. For this webinar, everyone will be muted. However, we will have times throughout the presentation to answer questions, and if you have a question, you can either write them into the questions section, and we'll be moderating both areas. So today I'm joined by Vanessa Lee, our data analyst here at Illinois Action for Children with the Community Systems Statewide Supports Project. And I'm delighted that we're joined by Amber Peters, who's the Collaboration Director of Elgin Partnership for Early Learning, as well as Pat Chamberlain, who's the Board Chair also of the Elgin Partnership for Early Learning. So we'd love to get a sense of who's participating in this webinar this afternoon. So if you could please answer the poll question. If you select other, please type that into the question pane so we know who's on the webinar. The pane may be minimized, so if you click the orange arrow, you'll be able to see the control panel, and you'll click the drop-down arrow, and the question pane should be toward the bottom. So Christina's going to launch the poll. If you can go ahead and let us know who's on the webinar. All right.
So we have 54% are collaboration leaders, 17% are coming from state agencies, 4% are service providers, and then 25% other.
Do we have a sense of the other? Okay, all right. Okay, great. So we got a good mix of folks here. We also like to understand what you hope to get out of this webinar. So if you can go ahead and write a response in the question box. What are you hoping to get out of this webinar this afternoon? And we just want to be sure we address what you were hoping to get out of the webinar. So you'll have moments throughout the webinar to ask questions, to really be able to interact. So you feel free to go ahead and type your questions at any point, and then we'll pause to answer them.
So someone says that they want a better understanding of kids and how it will help their collaboration plan for children's future. Someone else says info on how to use kids' data to engage collaboration partners, and looking for an update on the latest kids' data.
Great. So we will actually be addressing all those things in the webinar this afternoon. Great. Okay, so what you will learn from this webinar, we are going to go over the basics of the KIDS tool, what it is and what it's used for. We will also go over the findings from last year's data, the 2017 data that came out last year, as well as the findings from 2018. So we'll be looking at both sets of data. We'll also be going over how you can access and examine the kids' data. And what we're really excited about is you're going to be able to hear from Elgin Partnership for Early Learning of ways that collaborations can use the kids' data to further their work in the community. So next, we'd like to know, what do you already know about kids? So this is the second year that we're getting data from kids. But if we can have you all just think about a little bit about what do you already know about kids and the data that we have. Okay. So we'll go ahead and go over some of the basic information about kids before we look at accessing the data. So I'll pass it over to Vanessa Lee, our data analyst.
We've gotten a few things. So that it's a play-based kindergarten assessment. It's a survey of children's development at the beginning of kindergarten. 70% of the children in our county, quote, are not ready for kindergarten according to kids data. Someone says that they're a newbie to this. Another says, this is the first time I've heard of this. I'm interested in hearing about data to help inform my practice. And then looking at students individually.
Great. So we're going to be able to give you information that gives you the basics around kids if you're new to this, but then also if you're very familiar with kids, we're going to actually look into some strategies and ways that you could use this to further the work in your collaboration and improve outcomes for children in your community.
Right, so this is going to be a kind of quick overview of some of the basics of kids. So up until very recently, Illinois did not have a consistent statewide way of determining whether children entering kindergarten possess the skills and developmental strengths associated with long-term success in school. So starting in the 2017-2018 school year, so fall of 2017, all kindergarten teachers in Illinois began observing their students on a common set of developmental measures using the KIDS, so Kindergarten Individual Development Survey. So this is an observational tool designed to help teachers, administrators, families, and policymakers better understand the developmental readiness of children entering kindergarten. It was piloted for 5 years prior to statewide implementation, and ISB only requires kindergarten teachers to collect observations within the first 40 days of school on a minimum on 14 measures. So those 14 measures fall into 4 domains that provide a proxy of readiness in 3 developmental areas. The actual full tool contains 55 measures, but only 14 are actually required by all kindergarten teachers to use when they assess their students. And teachers are trained to collect the data on students as they go about their daily routine. So looking at who participated, the fall of 2017, about 81% of all kindergarten students in the state of Illinois were assessed on the 14 required measures, and fall of 2018, 89% were assessed on all 14 required measures. So there were additional students that were assessed, but they weren't included in final analyses because they either weren't fully assessed on all 14 measures or were considered unable to rate for some reason. Additional information that was collected in the fall of 2018 was around students' previous experiences. So we know that 30% were previously enrolled in state-funded pre-K. So that includes Preschool for All expansion, and preschool development grant funded classrooms. ISB currently doesn't have a way to track early childhood experiences prior to kindergarten other than state-funded pre-K programs. So it's just a reminder because we know that children enter kindergarten with a wide range of prior child care and education experiences, and that can range anywhere from in-home care to family care to Head Start, pre-K, and privately run programs. So getting into the actual data, something I just want to point out for the next few slides is that we'll be looking at data from 2017 and 2018, fall 2017 and 18 together, but we need to be careful about comparisons across groups and readings across years. Since 2017 was the first year of data collection, there were a number of issues, including concerns with fidelity and implementation and data quality, since the majority of teachers were new to the actual process and tool. So as the years progress, the data should become more reliable as implementation becomes more standard. The second year did show improved participation rates, which we saw on the last slide. The main thing here to see is that this is showing all students that were assessed on the 14 required measures, whether they're ready in all developmental areas, so those 3 areas that we showed when we were talking about the basics of kids, in 2 areas, in 1 area, or in 0 of the 3 developmental areas. So something to note here is just that for percentage of students who demonstrate readiness in all 3 developmental areas, that moved from 24 to 26% between fall 2017 and fall 2018. So then we're looking at these 3 areas more closely. So again, direct comparison across first 2 years. Don't take it at face value, but it can help raise questions. So here what's most important to note is that as far as the 3 developmental areas go, more students demonstrated readiness consistently in social and emotional development, followed by language and literacy, and then math. So it was on the slide earlier showing the developmental areas, but just as a reminder, kids' measures in social and emotional development assess children's curiosity, ability to self-regulate feelings and behavior, persistence, relationships with adults and peers. Language and literacy skills can be demonstrated in any language and through multiple modes of communication. And then kids' measures for the math developmental area assess children's observational skills, exploration of people and objects, investigation of objects, and concepts. So then we're going to look a little bit at subgroups. So this shows the breakout by race ethnicity. Data was not shared on Native American students and Pacific Islander students from fall 2017, but we can see fall 2018 for all these different groups. And it's pretty clear again in 2018 that there are gaps between readiness of students of different races, which reinforces the need for equitable supports in schools and in access to quality experiences before kindergarten. So it confirms that we know what we already know, which is that structural racism impacts children at this early stage of development. 3 other subgroups to look at are students with IEPs, students qualifying for a free or reduced price lunch, and students who are English learners. For the purposes of ISB, the students that qualify for a free or reduced price lunch, it's a proxy for poverty. So between the last slide and this slide, in terms of disaggregated information, it's pretty clear that it's important to examine data broken down into subgroups so that we can really raise awareness, have conversation, and kind of direct greater investment in supports for students demonstrating greater needs.
So how should we be using this information? Everyone, including collaborations, can use the data to understand in a general way the learning and support needs of an incoming cohort of kindergarten children at an aggregate level. And so it provides, again, at an aggregate level, an understanding of the developmental needs of students in a classroom, a school, and a district level. The 14 measures provide a population-based proxy about the overall readiness of a group of children at the beginning of kindergarten. So for teachers, the results can help them to support the learning and development of the students in their classroom. And for school administrators, kids data can help inform overall school improvement efforts, and it could allow for more informed decision making in terms of resource allocation. And for the state, KIDS provides an annual snapshot where ISB can look for trends across the state and then also across years through all the districts in Illinois because they're using common indicators. In the aggregate, the KIDS data informs policymakers of where communities may or may not have adequate resources for high-quality early learning programs. And the aggregate data reinforces the need statewide for increased investments in our early learners and gives the communities really a powerful tool for advocacy, particularly for subgroups like we went over today, such as students with IEPs, English learners, students receiving free and reduced price lunch, and Black and Hispanic children. So at this point, I'm going to pause for questions. Do we have any questions in terms of KIDS overall, anything about the data that you've seen and the implementation before we go into looking at how you can access and examine the data? I'll give you all just a second for any questions at this time. Okay, so Vanessa will now go into how we are able to access and examine the data.
Okay, so this is just a screenshot, but we'll look at the actual spreadsheet in a moment. So in 2017, fall 2017, the data was initially released mid-August 2018. It was a spreadsheet. It is now still available as a PDF on ISB's website. And then the fall 2018 data was released late June of this year, and is also on ISB's website in a spreadsheet format. In the same place, we could show you where that is, and the 2018 data does have far more disaggregated data than the 2017 data. So one thing to note is that in the spreadsheet, we won't be able to see individual school level data, so we'll only be able to see it at a district level. So districts have access to both district and school level data, but district level data in the aggregate is intended for public release and subject to FOIA, but school level data is not intended for public release and is not subject to FOIA. So if you are interested in seeing school level data for the schools in your community, you should reach out to your school district for their data so that you can see it at a more local level than at the district level.
Okay, so we have one question.
The question is, what is the measure that a child must access to be meeting for each measure?
Oh, indicator.
Yeah.
Indicator. I think that's the question. Let me clarify the question. You're asking is which of the indicators, beginning middle, beginning later, is the indicator for meets. It doesn't work that way. There are some fancy statistical ways of identifying where those cut scores are, and it's not as clear as a particular level, which is one of the things that Apple learned as we were digging deep into this data. I don't know if that answered the question, but.
Okay, so if there's a follow-up question, feel free to go ahead and type it in. Otherwise, we're going to move on. So a number of you may have already started having conversations with your school district about this data, possibly after the first year's data came out. So we'd like to get a sense of how many of you are working with your school district in your area, and if you've had conversations with them about the data. So if you could please respond to the poll question. I just want to get a sense of how folks are working with your school district. Okay, so just a few minutes there, and we'll be sharing the poll results shortly.
Yeah, so just about 60% of people have responded. So we've got 38% of folks saying that they do have a strong relationship with the school district. Another 29% says no, they don't. 21% says no, they're actively trying to engage the school district, and 13% says that they do not have any relationship with the school district.
All right, so now we're going to look at the actual spreadsheet for fall 2018 data. So this is pulled straight down from ISB's website. As you can see, it's done by school district, and we just put in a filter, but you can see that they show the percentage of kindergarten students rated on all required 14 measures. They look at it by the developmental areas. They look at it by racial and ethnic subgroups, and then the other 3 subgroups we had already talked about. So English learners, students with an individualized education plan, and students that qualify for free and reduced price lunch. So before we turn it over to Amber and Pat to talk about using kids data for Apple, we are just going to take a quick look at their data just to give a sense of what kinds of questions you might want to be considering when looking at your data. Look at School District 246 in Elgin. So it looks like in fall of 2018, 93% of kindergartners in Elgin were rated on all 14 required measures. 50% of those rated were not ready, did not display readiness in any developmental area, 19% in one area, 15% in 2 areas, and 16% in all 3 developmental areas. Similarly to what we saw with the state trend, more students were demonstrating readiness in social and emotional development, followed by language and literacy, and then math. And then we can take a look at some of these subgroups again. So percentage of kindergarten students demonstrating readiness in all 3 developmental areas by racial ethnic subgroup. So we've got Asian, Black, Hispanic, multiracial, Native American, Pacific Islander, and white students, followed by 3 more subgroups, so English learners versus not English learners, and then students who have an IEP versus do not, and then students who qualify for free reduced price lunch versus those who do not. So some things to consider when you're looking at your district's data are kind of, are we serving all of our children well? Are there certain groups that are kind of faring better than others? And if so, how do we address that? Who needs to be at the table to work with us on addressing that issue? Okay. So now we're going to turn it over to Pat and Amber. Oh, we have one more question.
So Laura asked, is there a resource for 3 to 5-year-old programs explaining at which level each child must be to be, quote, kindergarten ready? That she asked because they're currently rewriting their school readiness goals and wants to make sure that they're aligned with the kindergarten and kids' expectations.
Not that I'm aware of. One of the things we're doing, though, is looking at the standards and trying to match the standards to the different developmental levels on kids, and trying to use that as our indicator in those 3 areas for what internally will count as meeting, because we don't have the statistical information as clear.
I think there is also, on the kids' website, besides the 2 data sets, they have a lot of resources, and one of which I think is a crosswalk between common pre-K developmental assessments in kids, so that may be another resource to look at.
Right, exactly.
Really good.
Yeah, like teaching strategies. Yeah.
Very good.
All right, so now we'll pass it over to Amber and Pat.
Great. So EPPL, which is kind of the acronym for Elgin Partnership for Early Learning, which is a mouthful, was formed as a community collaboration in 2011. And it was really to start thinking systemically as a community on how to work on the issue of children not coming to school ready to learn. So in many ways, it was a response to the percentage of incoming kindergartners coming to school unprepared, but it's also an opportunity to come together as a community and to support the whole family from the ground up, which is also good practice. Representatives from the 3 ovals that you can see on the screen, health, early learning, and family support, came together to start strategizing on how we were going to work together to mitigate this community problem. We know that learning starts at birth, and for our community we have, it's a community problem, and that for a strong, healthy future, it has to start with our youngest learners. We started thinking about the notion of children not coming prepared for kindergarten and how that starts well before preschool years, and having partners think about that, because many think of it just as they come to school, they're not ready, and all of a sudden the school district starts getting dumped on. We discussed how we're going to dig in deep, get our messaging to the communities, that our future of our community starts at birth, And this messaging had to spread through our partners as we are not a direct service agency. At that time, EPL hired a collaboration director, formed a working board, and EPL was officially formed as an early childhood collaboration, as there's many across our state. We started bringing additional partners to the table for further discussions on what each person or their organization's role could look like. An example of an organization that's really, a key piece that sits on our board, as for many of the committees, is the school district. At the same time as we were being formed, the school district was hiring Give Me 5 community liaisons who started forming relationships with the child care centers, the family care providers. They were a key connection to some of this work because that's when the centers were working on their Accelerate, their different circles for gold and silver and bronze, and they were supporting those centers in the resources, training, as we know that they hold many children that also enter kindergarten for our future. EPL also looked at these changes at the system level because with many smaller systems in Elgin that are working in their own arena, but to achieve the goal of having all our kids ready to come to school prepared, it's important that we work in tandem for a goal of thriving healthy, the whole child. We look at our data as an opportunity in our community. If we had 90% of our children coming to school ready, our needs would look much different for our collaboration, and we might not have the opportunity to systemically work with these precious families we serve. We use data as an opportunity to assess the needs and the gaps and bring the partners to the table for action.
So we are really lucky in Elgin and U46 because our school district partner and our data committee partners are fairly geeky on data, and we think this is really a fun thing to do. So when kids data comes out, we get really excited and we like, oh, how fast can we schedule a meeting to start looking at that. So I hope that many of you have equally geeky people in your community that find this information absolutely rich and inspiring. One of the things that I think for Elgin, for our community, that has been so very powerful is that kids data has helped us have a very powerful tool in our toolbox to build the case for community investments, for community awareness around the importance of early childhood. The kids data catches a lot of people's attention, and they're not necessarily people in our normal ovals whose attention that it catches. The first year that I work with lots of other districts as well, and the first year that the kids data came out, I had calls from superintendents and assistant superintendents and curriculum people having noticed this data right away and needing help in terms of how to interpret that. And one of the things that I want to underscore is that one of the comments that a superintendent made was, oh my gosh, what's happening in preschool? And this was someone who knew what was going on, and so understanding the context of kids, that the kids data does not just reflect what your PFA is doing, since we know so many of our kids are not in those high quality programs. And if we're looking at communities like Elgin and U46 writ large, we have a very large English language learner population, which we know are not being served. So understanding what the context of the kids' data is critically important. And as a collaboration, we see part of our role is to help all of our partners be able to clarify and contextualize that information. And we've done it in a variety of ways by looking at, we talk about it in community meetings, in our collaboration meetings. We talk about it at Kiwanis. We talk about it in our social media, on Twitter and Facebook. We put it in the newspapers, as my daughter said this morning. we have to make sure that we're getting people your age, Mom, and so we're reading the newspapers, my dear daughter. We went on the local radio station to talk about this, talking about it with potential funders, getting the word out and contextualizing what does it mean and what does it not mean, right? But I will also want to underscore this notion of kids' data and contextualize it in the assessment arena of thinking about not everything that counts can be counted, and not everything that can be counted counts. What we're counting in what we're looking at in a play-based observational domain on those three areas is really critically important. It tells us, it gives us a temperature of where kids are starting. But in U46, as in some other districts, we're lucky because they're using kids 3 times a year, and so we can look at data, and we do look at data with our district partners to look at it in a deeper way. And so I think that's really, really powerful for all of us to think about. But we also know that there are other things that are not being counted and that they can still be very important. This is a picture of a classroom I worked with in Santiago, Chile. And there were no books, there were no pencils, there was one notebook per person. And yet, what was happening in those classrooms between teacher and children was so very powerful, and the sophistication of the play that was happening was incredibly important. So understanding how to use the data and what it tells us and contextualizing it is very, very critical for our collab. So we like to think, Apple likes to think about our kids' data plus, right? So how do we use kids' data, and where do we have gaps? Where do we need to look deeper to get more information? So as I mentioned, we took a look at the state standards and looked at them in terms of the indicators. We looked at where children were coming in after the first 40 days. We looked at them and looked at the subgroups and looking at who is, for example, we know English learners are scoring lower than other groups, and so we're wondering, are people using both languages in order to collect that data? And so that's something that we decided we better explore. So that came out of the data committee. We noticed, just like everyone else in the state, that our math scores were not our strong suit, right? And so we started thinking about how can we add some math concepts to some of the initiatives that that are already on the ground, and thinking about, and Amber will talk about more of these in depth, but how do we add math concepts into the laundromat, just not having books there, or having books about math in response to our community needs? How do we make sure that our book baskets have books that represent the languages of our kids in our community? How do we make sure, how do we look at the professional development of our EC staff and our partners? So our community partners, we did Apple sponsored a workshop on play, and 100 child care folks came at night to the library, more than we anticipated. But that shows that people are really interested in the community and responding to that community data. So the kids' data was really a powerful place for us to start. But we also looked at data that would supplement some of that information. So for example, we know our literacy, we want to work on literacy, so we found areas where children did not have library cards, and we identified that as a site in our community where we added additional resources, where we targeted the laundromat. We looked at where there was low preschool enrollment in particular neighborhoods and looked at summer outreach programs in those areas and brought our partners along that would help us across all of those domains. We also thought about what other data can we collect ourselves to look at impact of what we're doing. So things like just how many people show up to events, how many products, how many books have we distributed, how many calendars have we distributed, and what the reach is. We also, there's a Gimme 5 kindergarten survey that the school district collects information about how many people have heard our common message across all incoming 2,700 incoming kindergartners, which then gives EPPL information about who's getting the information, who's not, where do we have to reach further to take a look. And then we use other tools like ICAM and Risk and Reach Report, and thinking about other data sources that supplement and enrich and round out the context of our kids' data. And now Amber will talk to you a little bit more in depth about some of the initiatives.
Yeah, so like many of the early childhood collaborations, one of our goals is to enroll children into high quality programs, but as we've researched the data and as Pat talked about the Give Me 5 survey that was given to incoming kindergartners, we found that we have a lot more children not having any prior preschool experiences before coming to school than we have that do. So as a collaboration, we really started discussing that and what does that look like for our community, so we know that we have to meet families where they are. We can't wait for them to come to us, that we have to take action. So these are a few of the early childhood initiatives that we are doing in our community. One thing that we know is when we're talking about like where we meet families is we started kind of making a list of where are the families. They're in laundromats, they're at the city hall paying their water bill, they're at food pantries, they're at medical centers, and trying to kind of zero in, so what could that look like for our community. So the one thing that we've been working on for a long time is the Getting Ready for Kindergarten calendar. Partners help sponsor that. We print about 11,000 to 12,000 of those a year. It goes to all parents of 3- and 4-year-olds, and I'm sure some that are younger children that are ready for that. It's available in a lot of places. It goes to all preschool programs, all family care providers, the library, organizations around the community, home visitors give it out. It offers daily, easy activities to do with their children. It even has reminders. For example, I'm working on it for next year right now as today is Census Day for April the 1st, and you know it's important that your kids count. Have you done your kindergarten registration? Have you gotten your physical for kindergarten? Go to the library. So it offers lots of different things in it. We also have collaboration meetings. We have a full collaboration meeting 3 times a year. And what drives our meetings is really the data to see what our community really kind of needs most. This year we had a very well attended spring meeting. It was Commit to 2,000 Days meeting. We had several high-profile speakers like the mayor, the president of the hospital, the chamber, to talk about the importance of the first 2,000 days of a child's life. At the meeting, we launched our community bilingual book baskets because we had received a grant from First Book, and we were able to put it was for $70,000, which was about 20,000 books in our community, which has been really exciting. So the baskets go into places where families wait. And my dad always would say, if you have time to burn, you have time to learn. Mm-hmm. So we want those opportunities for children to read anywhere they wait. We love our collaboration meetings because it's also not only time to take action, but it's also an opportunity for our community to network with each other and really get to know each other, because the system works so much easier when you know somebody at each of these places. I'm pretty much a connector or air traffic controller, pointing resources to resources. A lot of people contact me about, I need to know somebody at this place. And so because we all network so well in Elgin, we know who to contact to make the system work easier. Our next meeting is November the 1st. It's on the risk and reach data, and we'll really be zeroing in on that local data. We have lots of risks in our community, as many communities do, but we also, one thing that's so wonderful about our community is we are so rich in resources. We talk as smaller systems on how we can take action locally on the risk to support our families. The laundromats is another place that we have gone into. We've partnered with 2 local laundromats, and like Pat said, kind of in places that we know that families are walking and families that children are not enrolled in preschool. We have bilingual books and bookcases, messaging about things you can do in the laundromat while you're waiting. Partners will go into the laundromat and read. They'll play with children, offer resources to families. An example is the hospital comes, and what they're looking for their data, they're looking for families, parents that have diabetes. I guess it's very rampant in the Hispanic population, and they're not getting the resources they need. So they'll come in and they can do glucose testing while they're in there. But while they're there, they work with children. And the children are kind of the pull to get the parents to come to them. And so then they also can have those conversations about taking care of themselves, because we know healthy children come from healthy parents. Data is hard to gather in the laundromat programs. So a lot of that data that we pull from there is from our partners, from our pictures. You can see on the screen that there's that's 2 different laundromats. The one is a partner from the library reading to children. And then the other one is another laundromat on that far right side, a different laundromat that we currently don't have partners in place that are directly going into that laundromat, because it's a much smaller laundromat. So we're looking at each laundromat individually of what works best and the amount of customers that they have. For 2020, we're working on 2 additional laundromats to go into that we're really excited about. We also, you can go to the next slide. So we also have an EPL pipeline that meets quarterly, and home visitors and case managers come to that because we want to make sure there's no wrong doors for families. The home visitors fill out transition cards when children age out of their programs and report that information to EPL. So we know that every child is either enrolled in a next step program or supported, because some families choose not to enroll their child in preschool. So we want to make sure that they know about other community resources, like things at the library or other things that they can do. Some other actions that we take out of our data is that we have directors and family care provider meetings that also meet quarterly. It's a time to network or to train or just to offer resources. I always survey them to kind of see what they need. Their next meeting, so this is an example, the next meeting for directors is going to be for the ages and stages social-emotional. I'm having a trainer come in to train the directors. And then the family care providers are having a training on literature, how you can learn math concepts through literature. So using some of those wonderful books that we have from our grant, so that we're excited about that. And the family care providers, we meet at night, and then the directors, we call it a lunch and learn. So they come during the lunchtime area. The summer park, this was a really exciting project that we had it piloted through the Elgin Township. They gave us the funding to go into 2 parks. And I think this is a good example of the perfect storm of resources in our community and how working together on one goal can really serve. So currently at 7 different parks in Elgin, Northern Illinois Food Bank is bringing lunch to the children every day, Monday through Friday during the summer. The city of Elgin is hiring attendants to be at those parks to help serve those lunches. So we picked 2 parks that, looking at the data from the library and the school district, to say, oh, wait a minute, those are 2 of our community program or community areas where the children aren't accessing resources as much. So we hired a teacher and a bilingual assistant to go into those parks twice a week. They came in and they brought books. They played with the kids, craft, built relationships, and offered resources. You can see the teacher on the right. That's Chris Young. She's from the YWCA of Elgin. And because they don't serve children per se in the summer in her family literacy program, she was able to partner with us on that program with one of her bilingual assistants, and they were serving 30 to 50 children a day. So we are really excited about that and hope to double or triple the sites that we go to this summer. So we'll be looking for resources. And I said, you know, one of the most powerful things that came out of that is the families on the last day said, "Are you coming back?" So we also partner with the food pantries and the mobile food pantries. And so for an example, for a food pantry, when we go into that, I bring partners like Easter Seals, the library and the school district to offer resources, sign up children for school, answer questions, sign up for ESL classes, to offer screenings. Ethel is, since we're not direct service, we're kind of the coordinator, we're the convener. We bring all the people together. Our partners are the experts, and we know that, and they are working in tandem to serve our families while they wait. So it's kind of like a one-stop shop while they're there. I'm usually an extra, so I get the good job of reading or playing with the children while my awesome partners are doing the work. It's the same with, I don't have this on the screen, but we're also partnering with the school district. One of their programs is called Dream Academy. It's a high school. And so we're calling that Dream Parents. And we call them this because they attend high school called Dream Academy, but they all have big dreams, but they all need some extra support to get to those dreams. So we ran a pilot group there a couple of years ago, and they just contacted us to bring that back. Again, we are not the ones that are serving those teen parents, but our partners are. So they're asking me to bring the community partners that bring the most bang for the buck to those teen parents to get those resources right there at high school for them. So things like the library, the baby's first library card, or home visiting, or I bring somebody in to tell them about child care assistance funding. So it's really just to serve them to see what they need. We also have, while you wait, flip charts. You can see those at the top under the pipeline. I forgot to talk about those. That's another pilot program that we started. That information is in English and Spanish, and kind of anywhere that a family might wait, those also might be available. We partnered with a medical center, as they have about 5,000 of the 10,000 children in Elgin that they are serving. And so it's little activities for the families to do with their children. Yeah, literacy and math specifically while they're kind of sitting there waiting. You know, and another thing that that's exciting about like these directors meetings, these pipeline meetings, is that kind of out of those networking meetings, things come out of them that they want. And one of the things that the home visitors are really asking for is to have some play groups brought back to our community, their community play groups. And so what they really want me to think through is how can they find space, what could that look like, so that there's no ownership of just one home visiting program to have it, but multiple to come together to really serve some of those families that aren't accessing any preschool, and some really to think through some cross-training as well for those home visitors and maybe DCFS and some of those.
So I think you can tell that we use kids' data in lots of interesting ways to drive our initiatives and to really think about what populations we're meeting, where and who we're missing, and how we can have a bigger impact on their readiness from birth through 5 going into kindergarten.
So thank you so much, Amber and Pat. I'm sure you guys have heard so much. If you have any questions for them about how they're using the kids' data in their community, as you can see, you know, we're talking about kindergarten readiness, but we know learning happens at birth and all the things that go into making sure children are ready for kindergarten takes a community effort. So if you have any questions at this time, we'll take questions for Amber and Pat. Okay, so if you do have any questions, feel free to go ahead and type in, and we'll still take it. But we'd like to hear from you now. So how do you see yourselves using the data? You got a sense of how one community is using it, early childhood collaboration, but how do you see yourself using the data? What would you do with that information, and how could you use it? So if you can go ahead and write some responses, we're going to summarize those ideas. Or any of those ideas that really resonated with you all and that you want to try in your community, or if you have any new ideas, feel free to share. Yeah.
Yeah, we'd love that.
A few people have said they need a little bit of time to let that sink in. But we had one question for Apple, and that's how you're funded.
How we're funded, yeah. So we are funded through one foundation, partially through the school district and partially through the United Way.
I should say that's sort of our backbone funding, but we do get grants to do particular initiatives as well. So we had a township grant for the laundromat, and we have had funding for different programs, if you will, or initiatives.
Ooh, all of a sudden a lot came in. Okay, so a lot of people have gotten back all of a sudden about how they can see themselves using this data. So one person says to better target the data collection and pre-K teaching strategies goal to assure that data alignment is happening. With community partners so that they can strengthen collaborative efforts. Being helpful for future collaborative grant asks just in general. And then Maureen says we'll be looking at the criteria for the kids assessment and talking about how we can help our community partners help families in these categories.
Okay, great. Thank you for sharing. Those are great ideas. So we'd like to make sure that we let you know where you can find resources. So Vanessa will go ahead.
These are just a few of them. So the KIDS website contains a lot of information as well as the 2 data sets. So you'll find both. If you go to this link, you will be able to access both data sets from fall 2017 and fall 2018. But other resources on the KIDS website include crosswalks, as mentioned before, between common pre-K developmental assessments in kids, district action planning tools, family resources, and contact information for kids coaches and learning opportunities. And 2 other very common sources for data to look at in conjunction with kids data would be ICAM, so that's the Illinois kind of data clearinghouse for all early childhood data, so that includes information on existing services, demographics of young children and their families, state resources, and it can be broken down by different levels, so you can kind of look at more of a local level by zip code, school district, county, whatever it is. And then census data. So something to note is that census data, it is now a new website. FactFinder is still a website, but they will no longer be adding new data to that anymore. So there is a new website for the census, and that's always useful for obtaining information on a lot of different topics. So demographics, housing, income, poverty, education levels, there's a lot of information available there.
I'd also like to direct you to our website, Partner Plan Act. There's lots of information on there, and there's toolkits and helping you in your collaboration work. But we're also offering a new type of support called on-demand consultation. So if you want to work specifically with a consultant and you want to think through how your early childhood collaboration can use the kids' data, how you can engage partners, Christina has pulled up the site, and you can see there's a form there that you would fill out, letting us know what your request is, how many hours you would need. you can have up to 6 hours to work with the consultant. So we really encourage you to take advantage of these supports. They're all free. They're all available to support your early childhood collaboration.
Yes, and going off of that, we have a few other supports that we wanted to call your attention to. One is our very newest one. It's on-demand learning. So it is going to be a bunch of different courses in the future, but as of right now, we just have one. It's the Early Childhood Collaboration Data. So this is really relevant to kids, I think, because it helps you to better understand how to look at data, examine data, talk about it, all of that good stuff. And it is live as of today. So we're really excited about that. You can find it on our website. You will need a WeConnect account, which is a mouthful, but that is just for our online communities too, so that we can have a forum that you all participate in as well. So that's that. And then I just wanted to also bring up the upcoming trainings that we have. So we've got the Priority Populations webinar that the Ounce of Prevention is going to be doing with us on October 22nd. So that will be a webinar as well. And then in December, we have an Engaging Families in Early Childhood Community Collaborations training. So that will have a panel of parent leaders and collaboration leaders who are doing parent engagement really well. And that will take place in Wheaton. Besides that, we have our Partner Plan Act conference in June. So next year it will be the 11th and the 12th. So we're having a day and a half. It'll start in the afternoon of 11th and go all day the 12th. But we do have an RFP that is now live. So if you think that if you are doing community systems work through a racial equity lens or doing something that relates to that, we would love to have you present. So you can find the RFP on our website right here.
Thank you, Christina. I would like to thank Amber and Pat again for being with us on this webinar and sharing all the exciting things that you're doing in your community, and Vanessa Leah as well, our data analyst. And if you would like to contact us, you could reach us. Our emails are on the slide there. So feel free to reach out and let us know what type of support you need. If there's a support that you have in mind that you don't see listed on our website or that we haven't mentioned, please do go ahead and contact us and let us know, because we really want to be responsive to community's needs. Thank you all for joining us this afternoon. We hope you enjoy the rest of your day.